Christian Schulz joins us now. Christian, thank you so much for being on the program. You're a little bit of an optimist. We see a lot of investors actually saying that at this moment it could really go either way. It's a 50-50 chance. But you think that although they'll leave it until the end, into the 11th hour, we will get a resolution in terms of what a coordinated default for Greece with them staying in the eurozone, or will they avoid default altogether?
Well, Greek is, of course, an important question, but we think that the main question that has been dealt with, or at least started to be dealt with this weekend, is the question of Italy, of the rest of the eurozone. Will that stay together? And I think we have an understanding now in Europe that it's not just about small Greece, just 2% of the eurozone, but about the larger countries which cannot be saved by the existing facilities, but which need a bigger response, and that's what everybody's talking about. Whether Greece will stay in the euro or not is really a smaller question, actually.
But Christian, talk me through, I mean, if we can't ring-fence Greece, then we're in trouble for the bigger countries. So your point, the point that you're making is basically that the governments are ready to put extra money into this EFSF fund, and therefore it will stop the markets from speculating that the eurozone can't save the bigger countries if they were to go. Is that the kind of general idea?
Well, the general idea is the existing EFSF, even in its upgraded version that we will hopefully see in the next month, is enough probably to save Greece, Portugal, Ireland, possibly even Spain, but it's not big enough to save Italy. But we have different models now of what could be done theoretically to save Italy if necessary. One is the option of maybe even further extending the EFSF, maybe leveraging it, or it remains the ECB doing it. But at least we have a discussion now what can be done about Italy.
So why are we getting this discussion now? It seems that it's almost EU politics at its worst, that we really have to come to the worst possible point where there are no more taboos. So when Angela Merkel comes up and says we really need to do everything we can to save the euro, did we have to go this far? Is it just the way that Europeans work because you have 17 countries and they're all politicians which want to be elected next year?
Well, yes, that plays part of the role. But really, we've had in July a decision which was probably well intended to upgrade the EFSF and have a slight restructuring of Greek debt. But what was missing and what the markets quickly spotted was that how to prevent contagion to really big countries like Italy. So we have an understanding now that this is the key problem.
Christian, you also know the ECB, of course, well, from years working there. And I'd like to take a closer look at how you see the interest rate tactic developing. Now, you actually see a rate cut now would be an embarrassing reversal, and think that the bank is more likely to beef up its non-conventional measures. You say that the incoming president, Mario Draghi, will be reluctant to cut for fear that he'll appear softer than his predecessor, and your most likely outcome is a single rate cut in the first quarter of 2012. Now, you then see a first rate rise in December of next year, followed by a series of hikes in 2013. Why has Trichet made Draghi's job so much more difficult? Why didn't he just cut last time, like a lot of markets were expecting him to?
Well, the ECB looks at the data that comes forward. Inflation is still above target. The economy is certainly cooling down, but it's not. We don't have a recession yet. So that makes it difficult for the ECB to argue at the same time buying all these massive amounts of bonds, and Germans not being very comfortable with that. And at the same time, even cutting rates would be seen as very soft. And so the ECB has been trying to appear hard on the one side and on the other side to do what's necessary. But now it's really a close call. Cut rates now before Draghi comes, or do it once Draghi is there, but then Draghi would probably like to do it a little bit later than already at his first meeting.
It is difficult, right? You come in as a new president, you're the governor of the Bank of Italy, Banca d'Italia, and you're already faced with this decision. Are we going to, so you don't think we're expecting any cut next week? Are we going to see some kind of covered bonds? We had a scoop on Bloomberg News that this is now what the ECB is looking at.
This could really be an option to not cut rates, to not lose face if you want, because they raised them earlier and now they would have to cut them again, but to do something alternative, maybe the covered bonds, maybe something else on the balance sheet rather than on the interest rate side, and then wait for data to become even worse and to have another thing to react maybe in January when they could cut rates then finally.
Christian, you know, we hear a lot, of course, of the troubles that we face here in Europe. Timothy Geithner just saying yesterday, well, you know, Europe finally has to come together and find a solution. He says he's confident that we'll find a solution, but what about the States? Because they're also looking at a possible recession. There's a deadlock possibly in Congress in the next couple of weeks. We kind of tend to forget that they're also in a heap load of trouble.
It's true that the debate sort of switches both sides of the Atlantic all the time. Once we have a bit more calm in Europe, the debate seems to spring up in the US again. And it's true that we have this super committee discussing additional cuts towards the end of the year. That's probably going to spark more fears again of the US possibly taking another hit. So we will probably see them have more discussion on that side. And we have to remember they have elections next year, so they would like to put the blame on somebody else. The Europeans are a pretty easy target at the moment, so that makes this discussion quite interesting as well.
And so overall, do you expect you expect the eurozone to stay together? You expect a mild recession in Germany, but are we going to see a worldwide double-dip recession, even if very briefly?
We don't think that there will be a major recession or even a mild recession in most of the world. We think that Europe, because of the major hit from confidence, is most at risk of seeing a small recession. We think that in the US things have calmed down a little bit. The recession risk has receded. It's still there, but it has receded from maybe 45% to 40, maybe 35. So it's still a risk, but it's lower than in Europe we see at the moment.
All right, thank you so much for joining us again this morning, Christian Schulz, Senior Economist at Berenberg Bank.